Great. I won't be too long. What I want to do is give you a fiscal update, and then Kendra is going to come and talk to you about the budget for the next fiscal year. We really only have right now a little over a month left of this fiscal year. And so what we have for data is everything up to the end of May. And we try and build the future budget on that and all of those things, trying to figure out exactly what it looks like. And we look at over the last year, last 10 months, crazy world, right? We brought you a budget in January because we weren't able to bring you a budget a year ago. The budget never changed much. We moved forward with it. We were not sure exactly how much of this budget that we're in right now that we needed because of COVID. We didn't know when COVID would open. And so we created a budget that looked like what it might look like if we had more freedom and the ministries planned. And then as we worked through it, we didn't need those funds because things did not open. And at the same time, I just find it amazing when I go back over time. I don't know how many years. It seems like whatever is on the table that God calls us to, we don't always hit the income on our budget, and yet we seem to always hit what we need for the expenses that we put into the year from our ministries and the operations. And so I'm just so grateful for that. If you look at our numbers to the end of May, just to give you a 10-month picture, we've got income to the end of May is 3.5 million. I'll get you to flip the screen if you've got it, but we're 3.5 million to the end of May. Our expenses right now is 3.1. And so that's great. But in June and July, we have checks that are going out. And actually in June, July, we send out some larger checks. So I think from what we can tell, the anticipated overage at the end of the year is about $200,000. We'll know exact on the other side of July 31st into August when we finish up the books. This is a blessing. We have not had to renege on any commitments that we've made to the ministries and our missions, and we've been able to provide all the funds that we've needed. We definitely have reduced some of our expenses because of the ministries and what they're able to do, but at the same time, our ministries have not been hurt by a lack of funds. Where they have been restricted is more just because of COVID restrictions. So they've had to do things differently. And for sure, doing things differently, more online, we have saved some dollars, and we've done really well. So I'm just really thankful for what God has brought us through, and we have maintained what we've got 2 months left. We have expenses. Don't stop giving. We need you to give, and we'll see what it looks like in a couple of months. We try and project out what it is to the end of the year as best we can. And that's what we build our new budget on that Kendra will be sharing with you. We do have reserves. We're not thin on some things. And so when you look at our reserves at the end of the year, we will have this 200,000. Typically, what we have for overage flips into our long-term contingency. We know that, maybe have the next slide if that's possible. That overage helps us. It becomes a buffer for us going forward, which I believe in this next year, as Kendra will share, we will need it because we are anticipating additional expenses and therefore additional revenue will be needed. We have a compassion fund reserve that's sitting at 67,000. Central Alberta Outreach, the fund right now is at 25,000. This is the fund that is generated out of 10% of all funds that go to the building. Now, we have not taken a building fund. We usually take a building fund offering in May and in October. We have people that give year round and give one-time gifts during the year. But we do, in the past, in May and in October, invite people to give specifically to the building. And so we haven't done that for probably, I don't know when the last time was. It's been a year and a half. I think it was since May of 2020. And so we've just left that. We've been able to cover all our bills from 4A. We've been able to cover some of the extras that we've had to buy in preparation for 4B. And right now we have a reserve of 88. But the funds that all come in, that consistently come in on a month-to-month basis, 10% of it goes towards the Central Alberta Outreach Team. That Central Alberta Outreach Team, they don't have a lot of funds to work with right now. Gord Kincott chairs that team, got some great people on it, and they still take requests and they still meet, and they're just dealing with a lot less funds right now. And so until we open up and we begin to do the building fund offering call, which we don't know when that is right now, phase 4B is just been delayed. We're waiting. And once that starts up, this fund will grow and they'll be able to use it. They're able to use it today based on requests that they get, and the building fund is there. And I think we also have a short-term contingency of $550,000 that's sitting there. This short-term contingency is there for hard times. And so I just want to tell you, like, this is how blessed we are at what God has actually done for us, that we have not had to dip into this over this last year. We didn't have to dip into it in the previous latter quarter of the year because giving has changed. And we, quite frankly, we're not sure what giving looks like in this next year. And the budget we're presenting today is a budget of faith, of anticipation of what ministry will become and open up to be for us and what we can do. It's still substantially less than what it was pre-COVID, but it's more than what it was this current fiscal year. And so it's a budget of faith. We know that we have this if we needed it, but at the same time, God has shown himself faithful to us in a crazy time. And so we look forward to seeing what he will do for us in the next fiscal year. We're just really thankful that the ministries have not been hampered, like I said, with their with financial resources. I do want to share with you just one of the lines in the new budget. We highlight this every year, but I don't know that we spend a lot of time on it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I do want you to know it costs money, banking fees, when funds come in via Visa, MasterCard, and credit card, basically, and indirect. We pay about 3%. And yeah, some of you get points on it, but it's all factored in, and there is a high cost to it. Approximately 45% of our giving comes in via credit card or debit card. We have to budget. There's a budget line in there that you will have seen that is, I think, $59,000. And of the $59,000, probably $50,000 of it is due to credit card and indirect. And I know some of you, that's your only way that you can, but I do know that bank payee is set up. You can drop checks off. You can we have e-transfer now for the past year. Bank payee, you can do auto withdraw. And those things are dirt cheap. We're talking like $2,000-3,000 probably that it costs us for that group of how you give. So I just want to encourage you. You can actually help us reduce the cost. And rather than us spending money on bank fees, we can use those funds for ministry, or our budget can actually be a little less in years to come, just because we're a little bit more conscientious of that. So if you don't know how to set up yourself up with bank payee or e-transfer, our team will help you out. You can send an email to the office and they'll for sure get you connected with our finance team, and they'll help you out. One last word. I got 2 people on staff that I just want to highlight for you. And they're in the background so often. And I've got there's 47 people on staff. They have worked so hard this year. And some of them, we had asked them to leave last April. And then we brought them back. And it's been a hard year. It's hard for the whole team. So I'm just super grateful for the staff and every last one of them. But I know that if you think about all the activity of this past year and what it takes to manage this facility and the team that's here, I just want to give accolades to Kyle Reed. He's our director of operations, facility operations. He keeps the team going, the maintenance team, the janitorial team. Life changed completely for us in the building. We still had to keep the lights on. We still had to clean. As people come and left, in between, I don't know if you know this, but in between every service, there's cleaning that has to happen here. Every event that happened, whether it was, even if there was a small number or larger number, whether it was in a small room or a larger room, cleaning had to happen. They've had to change what they've done, and they've had to just put out there. Kyle kept track of the COVID guidelines that were coming down, and he would pass them out to Dan, myself, and Sean, and Kendra, and we would figure out what are the guidelines for us as staff, what are the guidelines for us as a church. He kept us on track. There was days when we weren't following rules, and he had to pull his hair out, and he's the one that had the calls with AHS and with Alberta Health and Safety Occupation, and he's the one that had to work through all of those things with Kendra at times. And I'm so grateful for him and his team. And just, if you see him on a Sunday, say thank you for what you've done over the last year and a half. He has anteed up, and he has not faltered, and he's done an outstanding job. The other thing that we were wondering about, and I wasn't, we lost something. We lost Bobby. Bobby, you're sitting there. Bobby, you helped us work through the initial COVID. And then the idea of bringing everybody back, Kendra stepped in and helped us. What did it take to bring everyone back? Bobby, before Kendra, carried this hat of HR, Human Resource Director, and also Finance. If you can imagine the work that role takes to manage both those portfolios, Bobby before Kendra, now Kendra, absolutely outstanding people. And the things that they had to do for finances to help us stay on track, work with the different ministries, the things that had to happen from an HR perspective to do things legally, but also with a high level of care as best we can for those of our staff. These two people have done an outstanding job, and Kendra, picking up from Bobby, you've not missed a beat. And so I'm so grateful for that. And I'm just very thankful for these two ladies and the roles that they have. And Kendra, it's been a pleasure to work with you over the last year. And Bobby, you didn't have to worry because Kendra took it and ran with it and never missed a beat. And so I'm blessed. So I'm really grateful. So Kendra, I said, Kendra, you've got to tell us about the budget and put her on the spot. And she'll do a great job, I know. And that's our update.
We are just always grateful. I'd like to say we're amazed and astounded, but no, it is our God who says that I have more than enough to provide for what I'm calling you to do. And he's always been so faithful to do that. So with that, we're going to present it, turn it over to you, Kendra, to present the budget.
Perfect. So good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here and talking to you about the budget. When I think about the budget, you see so many different numbers, but to me, I see so many things that God does and all the fingerprints and all those numbers and all those lines, how there are different ministries and different things that are going on. And it's just so exciting when I see all these numbers and what God's doing with the funds that are in there. So on the first slide, there we go. So on the first slide, what I wanted to show you is just a picture of the changes of the budget over the last few years. So Jordan talked a little bit about this, that pre-COVID, you'll see that the tallest column there. So we are over $500,000 more in what our budget was then. And so last year during this time, Bobby and Jordan, really had to look at things, and we were looking at what was going to be ahead and trying to figure out, with the economy and with COVID. And so they did some cuts, and so, reduced some staff and reduced expenses. And so you can see that the budget that we're in now is significantly less than we were at a couple years ago. So then when you look at the budget that we are now, we have increased it just a little bit. So it's a 1.2% increase, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is. So just a little bit more of an increase. The one thing I wanted to highlight is that 15.9% over actual income. So Jordan talked a little about this, that we do need more funds for next year. And so we pray, that God will provide those funds, and that we do anticipate more financial engagement from people as they come back into the building and as programs start and as more things are going on next year. So that's that number highlighted there, and that we trust God in that. And then we're always really fiscally responsible, so we're monitoring things. We do post, so you can look online and see our financials every 3 months. We update that so you can see where we're at, and we watch that to make sure that we aren't spending more than we have. So yeah, so that's just a picture of the changes of our budgets over the last number of years. So if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to talk about what is that little bit of increase that we have. So if you look at all the ministries together, so if you take out missions and compassion and operations, so talking about youth and children and hope groups, all those together. So if you added up all their revenue and took away their expenses, the rest would be what's subsidized by general. So there's only been an increase of 8,600 in the subsidy from general. So most of the ministries, as you've looked at the budget, have stayed relatively the same. There's some, a little bit of increase, some a little bit of decrease within that. So one of the things when I was looking at that 8,600, one of the things that we have added into the budget that adds to that amount is a budget line for outdoor services. So last year, I'm sure many of you took part in the ones in August. That's what that picture is from that you see up there. So such a great time of being back together after the building being closed for a period of time. And we saw real value in those services, and so wanted to have those again. And so there's one coming up July 25th. So it'll be exciting to have that service, and as well baptism, I think, that day. So this just gives a budget for having 1 or 2 outdoor services during that time. So if you look at the booklet that was talked about earlier, the annual report, you'll hear all sorts of amazing stories in there. And that's what this is all about, what these ministries about. When I was reading through, I was amazed to hear how the ministries adapted and how many used online platforms and different things over the last year, and how youth talked about that there was over 300 students that tuned in to some of their virtual nights. And as well, children's, even my kids loved watching the videos that Pastor Julie and Pastor Jordan and their team made. And it was just amazing to see how things were adapted and how people still were engaged in that. So yeah, so that's a little bit about ministries. So there's so many more, so I encourage you to read what's in there. So if you go to the next slide, there's a lot of numbers here. So I just wanted to show that expenses were significantly down this year, but we're anticipating that we'll be more closer to the budget next year as things are happening, people in the building, youth, they have to buy snacks and different things happening. So you'll see that what we're at currently, what our budget was at was almost 400,000 for expenses, but our projected actual is a little less than 100,000. And this is for ministries only. And as well, the general fund subsidy was almost 183,000, but we're only subsidy will be about 60,000. So the budget next year, you can see, has decreased a little bit for expenses, but increased a little bit for general fund subsidy. And if you're wondering why a decrease, but why would that increase, it's because revenue has gone down a little bit for some of the ministries. So it's just to show that, next year we are anticipating that it'll be more realistic and that our expenses will be higher as more people in the building, more things are going on. So we go to the next slide. So just to talk a little bit about outreach and compassion. So just those two budget lines together. So if we were to pull out all the different outreach for the ministries, it actually is 23.7% of our budget, which is amazing that amount of the budget is put to outreach and to missions. And so if we look specifically at those two and look at what their increase in subsidy is, it's about 41,400. Compassion stayed the same. You'll notice in your booklet that it stayed the same for their budget, but outreach went up a bit. And so the things that were increased were sponsorship for refugee families, which we've done in the past. And so there's 2 families that we are going to be sponsoring. One is almost here, I think, and then one is in the works. So there's funds that are involved with that. And so that's one of the things that has increased. And as well, last year when the budget was set, there was a number of budget lines that were decreased. And so thinking that there was going to be no travel and different things that couldn't happen. And so those budget lines have been increased to levels that they previously were at, because we're hoping that, we can send out short-term teams and different things can happen. And so then the travel does cost. And as well, missionary member care, we have 21 missionary units. And so I know Tracy said that fluctuates a little bit, but right now 21. And so there's hoping to do more with that. And so whereas we're previously it was a lot of online, which is a great way to have connection. And just as a side note, I was calling one day about a reference for someone, and the person said, "Oh, you know what? I'm a CrossRoads missionary. Like I'm sponsored by CrossRoads. We love CrossRoads." And they talked about how they went to a retreat at Nordegg, and they're telling me all about it. And it's like, that's amazing. So kudos to Tracy and Karen and her team in that. So just the importance of missionary member care. So. The last thing is just in changing giving. So, compassion, we had such an amazing amount that came in. So a big thank you for that. So it was over 300,000 that came in. So it really met our budget. For missions, the giving has gone down a little bit. And so it's being subsidized a little bit more by general. And so that's reflected in the budget as well. It doesn't affect what we're doing in missions. We're still continuing to do those things. It's just subsidized a little bit more by general. So that increases that a little bit. So that's just explaining a little bit about missions. I could go on and on. There's so many great stories, but again, you'll be able to check that out in your annual report. So the next part is just talking a little bit about staffing. So if you go to the next slide. So when I talk about salaries and related, so related is more things like travel, PD, things, all the things that go into staffing, contract workers, that sort of thing. So if we added up all those expenses, they have increased by almost 50,000 in that. Currently, Jordan talked about, we have 47 staff and 14 pastors. And so that's where we're at as far as staffing. And it is less than we were at a couple years ago. So if you look at the budget for that a few years ago, the budget was over 300,000 more than it is currently right now, and it was projected at 43.8 FTE, whereas this budget is based on 38.5. So it's similar to last year's budget. So last year was similar to that 38.5. So just the salaries budget line has increased by 54,000, and that's for a little bit more staffing. There's a contingency that's built into that, and as well, just some incremental increases for some staff according to our compensation policy. So that's kind of where we're looking at staff. I'm so privileged to be on staff. We have such an amazing staff here. It's just amazing to see all the different things, and when I get to meet with them about their budget lines, and just to see the excitement that they have as they talk about the things that these different amounts are for. So that's just a little bit about our staffing budget. So the next one is, the last one to talk about is general. So if you look at the back of the budget, you'll see our general. And so if you take out the salaries and all the staffing pieces, the rest is our general operations. So that's things like maintenance, publications, phones, all the different things that to run the building. And so if you added up all those expenses, they've gone up by about 1,500. So if you specifically look, there's little tweaks here and there of just knowing, oh, this is going to go up and this will go down, but not a lot of changes in there. So, and as Jordan talked about, there's an amazing facility team here and all that they do and all that they've done over this last year, and the changes constantly. And we're excited to have more people in the building again this coming year. So that's where we're at for general. So that's kind of the budget as a whole. So, you've hopefully had a chance to look at the specific budget lines and see everything that's going into the budget for next year. And, we prayerfully consider this budget and see what God has for us, and just excited to see what the future will hold in that. So that is everything for the budget. So I think the next part is the motion. Yes. I give a motion that we approve the 2021-2022 budget as presented.
Motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder to approve the budget? Dwayne Holland, seconder. Now we're going to open the floor up to comments, or if there's questions online before we call the vote. Have you ever noticed that when you say the word money or numbers, like 3/4 of the population just goes blank? And then you get these gifted individuals like Kendra, and they just light up and they get so excited about it. So it's great to have them as part of that world, and having them look at these things and go through it line on line. And there again, if you have questions on any items in the budget itself, they are all fair game. you are certainly welcome to ask it, as the budget was circulated in the summer meeting circulation that was sent out online, and there are copies in the foyer as well. And if you don't have the questions now, that's fine. Kendra would love to entertain those via email. And the hard ones she just passes off to Jordan to answer anyway. So not seeing any questions, I'm going to call on the vote. Oh, yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, are you talking overall or just? Yes.
The question hasn't actually been fully asked yet. So he was asking, the budget is set at 4.9, our income was 3.5. And I think you're going somewhere with this.
What are we saying with that? We're down significantly. We can increase that budget to, just curious.
So the question is that it seems to be an aggressive budget, going from 3.5 actual to a budget of a budget of 4.9, and aggressive. What is the thought behind that? So, Pastor Jordan.
Yeah, it's a fair question, Wes. It's a lot. If you look at, if we project out 12 months, I think we're going to need, for general fund giving, we're probably looking at around an 18% increase. We know that attendance is down. We have no idea. Again, we have no idea. It's a best guess, and we've put a lot of work into what it could be, but it is still a best guess, and it is a faith budget. We also know that we just haven't. Our approach has always been, let's not spend what we don't have, and so that's there. So some of, say, for example, some pieces of this budget they just would not get spent unless we actually had the funds for it. We know that giving has dropped probably about 10% over what we had hoped for. We have no idea what attendance really is, but we know that from what we can tell, we have strength in those that are CrossRoadians that give, because we actually, this is personal, I think we're less than 10% down in our numbers that would call CrossRoads Church their home church. But the giving has only dropped by about that. And so most people that are connected with CrossRoads in a deeper way that give, they have not disappeared so much. We'll always lose, but we haven't lost those core givers. We also know that I think going into the fall, it is fair to say that we do need more. We need more than what has come in this year, absolutely. And this budget is asking for that. So it is an ask of ourselves, and it'll be an ask of the church in the fall when we get started to see where we're at, to know if we can actually meet this budget and not be short. We know that we have a reserve. I would be thrilled if we never had to touch it. I'm actually hoping that God is consistent with what he's done for us. So yes, I think if you looked at if the current budget that we're in, if you looked at what the increase was, actually you'd have to go back 2 years. We were always looking for another 15 to 19, 20% more to meet that budget. And yet we never ever needed it because expenses came in at a reasonable level, and we never spent all the funds that we needed. So yes, it's an aggressive budget. And we know that things are open up, so things will cost us more. And so you don't see an increase over the current budget, but it's really small. We're trying to hang close to the current budget and not bloat it up more, because the current budget figured about COVID being open half the time. It never. So less money came in. Why? It's a great question. Did people not give because they didn't think we needed it? It's an unknown for us. I think more than any time in our future, this next budget year is a test for us and where we're at. I think the current budget year, we had confidence going into it that we could make it work because we had some reserves. We had people that gave in just before the tail end of just at the tail end of the previous year. Yeah, it's an unknown for us, Wes. It's a good question. One that you have to hear, that we are walking into a year where we do need to give, and we have less people giving. Our budget is less. It's about 500,000 less than what it was pre-COVID, but it doesn't mean anything if people don't give and we can't meet what our current projection is. So, yeah.
Does that answer your question, Wes? Thank you.